Hello, my dear students. So today we are going to start and read the next chapter, that is the bond of love. But before we start, let's go through the question that is given over here. Can there be love and friendship between human beings and wild animals? So I'm going to ask you for the answers in the classroom. So be prepared and be ready for giving the answers there. Sloth bears, as you can see a bear, everyone has seen a bear, isn't it? So sloth bear, so there's an adjective added to bears over here. Sloth means lazy, okay, laziness. The person, or here the animal, we are talking about the bear especially. So it means reluctance to work or make an effort, so lazy. Sloth bears inhabit forested areas including the tropical rainforest of India and grasslands at lower elevations. So they're basically found here. Sloth bears have very shaggy, unkempt hair and long muzzles. Using their claws to dig, they can then use their lips to form a tube, which can go deep into the ground or into hard to reach areas where possibly nobody can reach. But then again, they use their long nose, they'll use their long muzzle, isn't it, to reach hard to reach areas like dead trees for their food. Their main food is termites. You can hear them suck up their food from several feet away. I'll begin with Bruno, my wife's pet sloth bear. I got him for her by accident. 2 years ago, we were passing through the sugarcane fields near Mysore. People were driving away the wild pigs from the fields by shooting at them. Some were shot and some escaped. We thought that everything was over. Then suddenly a black sloth bear came out panting in the hot sun. Panting means taking in deep breaths heavily. Okay, taking in breath heavily. Fine, huffing and coughing, you can say. So here the narrator says that he would like to begin with Bruno. He mentions first about Bruno, saying that this Bruno belongs to her wife, who is actually her pet, isn't it? And then he got him for her by accident. 2 years ago, they were passing, he and his companions were passing through the sugarcane fields near Mysore. People were driving away the wild pigs from the fields by shooting at them. Some were shot and some were able to escape. And they thought that everything was over when suddenly they found a black sloth bear, as you can see in the picture, came out panting in the hot sun. Fine. Now, I will not shoot a sloth bear wantonly. Wantonly means for no good reason, he says. He mentions that he would definitely never shoot, isn't it? Never shoot any sloth bear wantonly without any reason. But unfortunately for the poor beast, one of my companions did not feel that way about it and promptly at once shot the bear on the spot. As we watched the fallen animals, we were surprised to see that the black fur on its back moved and left the prostrate body. Then we saw it was a baby bear that had been riding on its mother's back when the sudden shot had killed her. The little creature ran around its prostrate parent, making a pitiful sound. So prostrate here means lying on the ground facing downwards. So a baby bear was found, isn't it? The little creature ran around its prostrate parent, making the parent who was lying on the ground facing downward, because the mother was shot dead. Okay, so that was an accident, and that accident, give an opportunity for the narrator to bring a sloth bear as a pet, isn't it? Small baby bear as a pet, as a gift to be given to his wife. I ran up to it to attempt to capture. It scooted into the ground sugarcane field. Okay, scooted means ran away. Okay, so following it with my companions, I was at last able to grab it by the scruff of its neck while it snapped and tried to scratch me with its long hook claws. Definitely, animals are quite frightened of human beings. So he was trying to, save himself from the clutch of the human being, from the hands of human being, and the narrator had to grab it by the scruff of its neck, okay, while it snapped and tried to scratch him with its long hook claws. Fine. Now, then we put it one of the gunny bags we had bought, and when I got back to Bangalore, I duly presented it to my wife. So the sloth bear was gifted, as I told you earlier, to his wife. She was delighted, she was happy. She at once put a colored ribbon around its neck, and after discovering the cub was a boy, she christened it Bruno. She christened it means she named it Bruno. Bruno soon took to drinking milk from a bottle. It was but a step further, and within a very few days he started eating and drinking everything else. And everything is the right word, for he ate porridge. You all know what porridge is, isn't it? Made from any ingredients, vegetables, fruits, nuts, isn't it? Meat, especially pork, curry, and rice, regardless of condiments and chilies. Bread, eggs, chocolate. So these were the food that were taken by, isn't it? Taken by Bruno. Chocolate, sweets, pudding, ice cream, etc., etc. As for drink, he preferred milk, tea, coffee was given, lime juice, aerated water, buttermilk, beer, alcoholic liquor, and in fact anything liquid. It all went down with relish. That is, he enjoyed all kinds of drink that he was given by the narrator's wife. Okay, by the author's wife. The bear became very attached to our two Alsatian dogs and to all the children of the tenants living in our bungalow. He was left quite free in his younger days and spent his time in playing, running into the kitchen, and going to sleep in our bed. So here you might have got the answer to the first question that we started with the chapter, isn't it? And many of you might be having pets at home and definitely might be enjoying and passing your time along with your pets at home. One day an accident befell him. He met with an accident. I put down poison, and the name of the poison that was spread around the house was barium carbonate, to kill the rats and mice that had got into my library, the narrator says. Bruno entered the library as he often did, and he ate some of the poison. Paralysis set in to the extent that he could not stand on his feet. So he suffered from paralysis, and he drank that barium carbonate, which was actually meant for killing the rats in the house. But he dragged himself on his stumps to my wife, who called me. I guessed what had happened. Off I rushed in the cars to the vets. Vets here means the veterinary doctor residence. A case of poisoning, tame bear, barium carbonate. What to do? Even the narrator was confused. He was baffled. He couldn't understand what next he could do. But then he took Bruno to the veterinary doctor. So the vet took out his medical books and started looking for the symptoms. What poison did you say, sir? Barium carbonate. Ah, yes, barium salts. Ah, barium carbonate. Symptoms, paralysis, treatment, injections of. Just a minute, sir. I'll bring my syringe and the medicine. A dash back to the car. Bruno still floundering. Okay, still floundering here means, just now I told you the meaning also. Floundering means struggling. He was still struggling to move about on his stumps, but clearly weakening rapidly. Some vomiting, heavy breathing, panting, just now I told you, with heavy flanks and gaping mouth, because he had taken the poison, isn't it? So what is the name of the poison? It's barium carbonate. So he was taking heavy breath. Okay, he was panting, he was vomiting, he had become weak. Hold him, everybody. In goes the hypodermic. Hypodermic here means a long needle used to give an injection under the skin. So a long needle was inserted inside his body. Bruno squeals, he cries. 10 cc of the antidote enters the system, with a drop being wasted. 10 minutes later, condition unchanged. Another 10 cc injected. 10 minutes later, breathing less stertorous. Stertorous means less noisy. Okay. No more it was noisy. He was not panting now. Okay. Bruno can move his arms and legs a little, although he cannot stand yet. 30 minutes later, Bruno gets up and has a great feed. He looks at us disdainfully. Disdainfully means arrogantly. Okay. As much as to say, What's barium carbonate to a big black bear like me? Bruno is still eating, so it seems he's hardly bothered about what has gone inside his body, isn't it? And so he looks at the author disdainfully as well as to the vet doctor. It was all right now. Another time he found nearly 1 gallon of old engine oil which I had drained from the sump of Studebaker. Okay, so which I had drained from the Studebaker. Here means Studebaker is an old American car. Okay, so the author had drained the engine oil from the sump of Studebaker, and that was taken by Bruno and was keeping as a weapon against the inroads of termites. He promptly drank the lot. Promptly means at once, but it had no ill effects whatever. The months rolled on and Bruno had grown many times the size. So you all have seen bear, right? So you can imagine how big the bear is in size. So likewise Bruno had grown many times the size he was when he came. He had equal the Alsatians in heights and had ever even outgrown them. But so he has been compared here to the Alsatian dogs, okay, but was just as sweet, just as mischievous, just as playful, just as jolly, isn't it? And he was very fond of us all. Above all, he loved my wife and she loved him too. She had changed his name from Bruno to Baba, a Hindustani word signifying small boy. So before he was Christian, he was named Bruno. Now his name had been changed and he was called Baba. Okay, and he could do a few tricks too. At the command Baba wrestle or Baba box, he vigorously tackled anyone who came forward for a rough and tumble. Give him a stick and say, Baba, hold gun, and he pointed the stick at you. Ask him, Baba, where is baby? And he immediately produced and cradled affectionately a stump of wood, the bunch of, you can say not the bunch, but the bark of wood, isn't it? The log of wood which he had carefully concealed. Concealed here means hidden in his straw bed. But because of the tenant's children, poor Bruno or Baba had to be kept chained most of the time because he had grown big in his size. Then my son and I advised my wife and friends advised her too to give Baba to the zoo at Mysore. He was getting too big to keep at home, so he was growing in size day by day. After some weeks of such advice, she at last consented. Consented means she agreed to the proposal hastily in hurry, and before she could change her mind, a letter was written to the curator, so caretaker of the zoo. Okay, a letter was written to the caretaker of the zoo or a person who looks after the zoo, okay, who takes care of the zoo or is in charge of the zoo. Did he want a tame bear for his collection? He replied yes. The zoo sent a cage from Mysore in a lorry, a distance of 87 miles, and Baba was packed off. Finally, he was sent to the zoo in Mysore. We all missed him greatly, but in a sense we were relieved. My wife was inconsolable. Nothing could pacify her. She wept and fretted. She was worried about Bruno. For the first few days, she would not eat a thing. Then she wrote a number of letters to the curator. How was Baba? Back came the replies. Well, but fretting. He refuses food too. Even Baba did not take any food after he was sent to the zoo in Mysore. After that, friends visiting Mysore were pleaded to make a point of going to the zoo and seeing how Baba was getting along. They reported that he was well but looked very thin and sad. All the keepers at the zoo said he was fretting for 3 months. I managed to restrain means somehow he tried hard to stop his wife from visiting Mysore. Then she said one day, I must see Baba. Either you take me by car or I'll go myself by bus or train. So I took her by car. Friends had conjectured here means guessed, that the bear would never recognize her. I had thought so too, but while she was yet some yards from his cage, Baba saw her and recognized her. He howled with happiness. She ran up to him, petted him through the bars, and he stood on his head in delight. Even Baba was happy to meet the narrator's wife, the author's wife, isn't it? As predicted or as conjectured or guessed by the narrator's friend, that Baba would not ever recognize the narrator's wife after meeting her, but everything went opposite. When Baba saw her, he quickly recognized her and stood on his head in delight. In delight means he was quite happy to see her. For the next 3 hours, she would not leave that cage. She gave him tea, lemonade, cakes, ice creams, and whatnot. Then closing time came and we had to leave. My wife cried bitterly. Baba cried bitterly. Even the hardened curator and the keepers felt depressed. As for me, I had reconciled myself to what I knew was going to happen next. So the narrator very well knew that what would be the next episode after this. Definitely you can see the bond of love both of them shared with each other. Oh please sir, she asked the curator, may I have my Baba back? Hesitantly he answered, madam, he belongs to the zoo and is government property now. I cannot give away government property, but if my boss, the superintendent at Bangalore, agrees, certainly you may have him back. So he just told her that if the superintendent of Bangalore agrees, isn't it? Definitely she could take Baba back to her house, right? Now, there followed the return journey to Bangalore and a visit to the superintendent's bungalow. A tearful pleading. Baba and I are both fretting for each other. So she begged in front of the superintendent and pleaded him and told that both of them were equally worried for each other. Will you please give him back to me? The superintendent was a kind-hearted man and consented. That is, he agreed. Not only that, but he wrote to the curator telling him to lend a cage for transporting the bear to Bangalore. Back we went to Mysore again. You can see the power of love. You know, love does not define anything. It is undefinable, my dear children, isn't it? So it moves or crosses the borders, right? So you can see the love, the affection, the compassion both of them shared for each other. So definitely we all know that animals are quite faithful. Back we went to Mysore again, armed with the superintendent's letter. Baba was driven into a small cage and hoisted on top of the car. So finally he was hoisted. Hoisted means raised by means of ropes or pulleys. Fine, hoisting the flag, right? So he was hoisted on top of the car. The cage was tied securely and a slow and careful return journey to Bangalore was accomplished. Okay, was accomplished means the task was accomplished means made successful. Okay, was able to achieve that task. Once home, a squad of coolies, where see the collective noun used over here, a squad of coolies, fine, were engaged for special work in our compound. An island was made for Baba. It was 20 feet long and 15 feet wide and was surrounded by a dry pit or moat 6 feet wide and 7 feet deep. A wooden box that once housed fowls was brought and put on the island for Baba to sleep in at night. Straw was placed inside to keep him warm and his baby, the gnarled stump. Okay, the gnarled stump means here the rugged, twisted. Fine, it means rugged and twisted stump. Along with his gun, the piece of bamboo, both of which had been sentimentally preserved. Okay, so when Baba went to the zoo, when he was sent to the zoo, we can say narrator's wife, you know, preserved his stump, preserved his piece of bamboo which he used as gun, which he used as cradle, isn't it? So it was preserved. So sentiments were attached to that. You can see the love and bond again. So the title of the story is quite appropriate, my dear children. Since he had been sent away to the zoo, were put back for him to play with. In a few days, the coolies hoisted the cage onto the island. Special island was made for Baba and Baba was released there. He was delighted, he was happy, standing on his hind legs, he pointed his gun and cradled his baby. So both of them were quite happy. My wife spent hours sitting on a chair there while he sat on her lap. He was 15 months old and pretty heavy too. The way my wife reaches the island and leaves it is interesting. I have tied a rope to the overhanging branch of mango tree with a loop at its end. Putting one foot in the loop, she kicks off with the other to bridge the 6-foot gap that constitutes the width of the surrounding pit. The return journey is made the same way, but who can say now that a sloth bear has no sense of affection, no memory, and no individual characteristic? So definitely when you give love to someone, in return you get love. Even if animals, they don't speak, they don't have that power of communication as we human beings have, but still, they can feel, they can analyze, they can feel our sentiments, they get attached. And those who have pets at their home will definitely understand their sentiments and this kind, or the bond of love they both shared. Hope you liked the story. Thank you. And if still you have any doubt, you can clear your doubts with your teacher in the classroom. Thank you.